April 3, 2002. At 6:10 a.m., the body of 19-year-old Rebecca Alton was found behind St. Mary's Baptist Church in Hollow Creek, Missouri. Sheriff Thomas Grayson was first on the scene, having been called by the church custodian, an elderly man named Walter Freeman who had arrived early to prepare for morning service. The morning dew still clung to the grass when Grayson's boots crushed it underfoot. The air held a sharp chill, his breath visible in small clouds as he approached the scene. Becca was half-wrapped in a choir robe, royal blue velvet with gold trim, the same one she had worn while singing just hours before. Her auburn hair splayed across the ground like spilled wine. The bruises along her neck and wrists told a story of struggle, but it was the wound across her throat that stopped Grayson cold. The cut was clean, deliberate, almost surgically precise. Not the frenzied slash of passion, but the calculated stroke of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Jesus Christ," Grayson whispered, crouching beside the body. He'd known Becca since she was a child. She used to bring cookies to the station every Christmas. The church custodian stood trembling several yards away. "I thought it was a bundle of clothes at first," Walter said, his voice cracking. "Then I saw her hand." Grayson nodded, pulling out his radio to call it in. He knew this case would change Hollow Creek forever. Towns like theirs, population 8,712, didn't see crimes like this. They saw drunk drivers and petty theft, not murder. Not like this. By noon, the small police force had established that Becca had sung at Wednesday evening service. The choir director, Martha Simmons, confirmed that service had ended around 9 p.m. Becca, always helpful, had stayed after to tidy up the choir room and help put away music sheets. She was in good spirits, Martha told Detective James Hayes, who had taken lead on the case under Sheriff Grayson's authority. Hayes was young, 35, but had experience from his time with Kansas City PD before moving back to his hometown 5 years ago. "Did she mention any plans after church?" Hayes asked, his pen hovering over his notepad. Martha shook her head. "No, but that wasn't unusual." Becca kept to herself about personal matters. By evening, they had pieced together that several congregants had seen Becca in the parking lot around 9:30 p.m. Eleanor Whitfield, a 67-year-old church organist, recalled seeing Becca talking with someone in a dark-colored SUV. "I couldn't see who was inside," Eleanor said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she sat in the police station. "The windows were tinted, and I was focused on finding my car keys. I remember thinking it was strange she was leaning into the passenger window instead of getting in." She paused, eyes filling with tears. "If only I'd paid more attention." Hayes assured her it wasn't her fault, but the information troubled him. The church had no security cameras in the parking lot, who would need them in Hollow Creek? And no one had caught a license plate. They notified Becca's parents, Margaret and Robert Alton, who collapsed into each other's arms upon hearing the news. Their only child, gone. The perfect daughter. And she was perfect, according to everyone in town. Becca sang like an angel in the church choir every Sunday and Wednesday. She volunteered weekends at the animal shelter, walking dogs and socializing cats. She worked part-time at Sweet Dreams Bakery, where customers would line up just to see her smile as she handed them their pastries. She had been accepted to Missouri State on a partial music scholarship, planning to start that fall. "She never gave us a moment's worry," Margaret said between sobs, sitting in their immaculate living room while Hayes asked gentle questions. Family photos lined every surface, Becca in her graduation cap, Becca with a puppy at the shelter, Becca behind the bakery counter. "Did she have a boyfriend? Anyone special in her life?" Hayes asked. Robert Alton shook his head firmly. Becca was focused on her future. She didn't have time for dating. She wanted to wait until college, do things the right way. Hayes nodded, but something felt off. A beautiful, talented 19-year-old with no romantic interests. It wasn't impossible, but in his experience, people rarely knew their children as well as they thought. With the parents' permission, a team searched Becca's bedroom. At first glance, it confirmed everything they'd heard: gospel music CDs, college brochures, volunteer award certificates. A Bible sat on her nightstand, bookmarked with a pressed flower. But Detective Hayes had learned long ago that people kept their secrets hidden, not displayed. In her closet, behind a row of modest dresses, they found a locked wooden drawer built into the wall. Margaret seemed genuinely surprised by its existence. When they pried it open, they found a second cell phone, a small journal, and a photo of Becca with a man at least a decade older, their cheeks pressed together, both smiling widely. The phone was a basic flip model, registered under the name Emma Johnson, a false identity. The call log showed repeated communications with a single number. The text messages revealed everything: a months-long relationship with Jacob Reinhardt, 32, a married youth pastor at Riverside Community Church, just 5 miles down the road. The messages were explicit, detailing secret meetups and passionate encounters. The most recent exchanges had grown increasingly tense. "Becca, I can't keep doing this. Your wife deserves better. I deserve better. Jacob, please, don't do this. You know how much you mean to me. Becca, it's been months of promises. Nothing changes. Jacob, I'll leave her. I just need more time. Becca, I'm done waiting. It's over. Jacob, we need to talk. Not like this. Becca, there's nothing left to say. Jacob, meet me after choir. No one can see us this time." That final message had been sent at 8:12 p.m., less than an hour before the end of the church service where Becca had sung. Hayes felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just a lead, it was motive, opportunity, and premeditation wrapped into one. Jacob Reinhardt was brought in for questioning the next morning. He sat in the small interrogation room, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold before him. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them on the table. "I didn't kill her," he said before Hayes had even started the formal questioning. "I loved her." Hayes let the silence hang for a moment. "You were having an affair with a girl 13 years younger than you. A girl you met through church youth events when she was what, 16, 17? Jacob winced. "It wasn't like that. Nothing happened until she was 18. I know it was wrong, but I loved her. I still do. Your last text told her to meet you after choir. Witnesses saw her in the parking lot with someone in an SUV. You drive a Chevrolet Tahoe, don't you, Jacob?" "Yes, but I wasn't there. I ended things with Becca a month ago. We hadn't spoken since." Hayes slid the phone across the table, the text thread displayed. 11 messages the night she died say otherwise. Jacob's face drained of color as he scanned the messages. This isn't right. I didn't send these." He looked up, panicked. "Someone must have taken my phone. Or what? Or someone setting me up." Hayes pushed harder. "Where were you last night between 9 p.m. and midnight?" "Home. With my wife. All night. You can ask her." They did ask Catherine Reinhardt, a quiet woman with tired eyes who confirmed her husband's alibi without meeting the detective's gaze. "Jacob was home by 8:30. We had dinner together, watched TV, and went to bed around 10:30. He never left." It seemed solid enough, but Hayes had seen too many spouses lie to protect their partners. He assigned an officer to dig deeper into Catherine's past, and the results were revealing. She had called police twice in the last 3 years reporting domestic disturbances but had recanted both times before charges were filed. When confronted with this information, several church members from Riverside reluctantly admitted that Catherine often covered for Jacob's absences and indiscretions out of fear. "He has a temper," one woman said quietly. "Not violent, exactly, but intimidating. Catherine's afraid of being alone. She has no family, no career of her own." Within days, Catherine's alibi crumbled. When Hayes interviewed her again, this time without Jacob present, she broke down. "I took a sleeping pill that night," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I was asleep by 9. I don't know when he came home. I just assumed he was there all night." Just as Hayes thought they were closing in on their killer, the case took an unexpected turn. A forensic examination of Becca's secret phone revealed another thread of messages, these to a former classmate named Nolan Price. Nolan had been expelled from Hollow Creek High School 3 years earlier after a violent altercation with another student that had left the boy hospitalized. Since then, he'd been working night shifts at the Gas and Go station less than a mile from St. Mary's Church. The last message from Becca to Nolan had been sent just days before her death. "Leave me alone. I told you it was a mistake. It never should have happened." When they brought Nolan in, he was belligerent and defensive. At 22, he still had the lanky build and acne-scarred face of a teenager, but his eyes held something harder, colder. "Yeah, I knew Becca. Everybody knew Becca. Saint Becca," he sneered. "But she wasn't as perfect as everyone thought." Hayes leaned forward. "What do you mean by that?" "She liked bad boys when no one was looking. We hooked up a few times last month. Nothing serious." "Were you working the night she died?" "Nah, I called in sick. Manager can confirm." "So where were you?" "Home. Alone. Playing video games. No alibi." And when Hayes pushed further, he discovered something more damning. A friend of Nolan's reported that after Becca had broken things off, Nolan had been furious. "He told me, Becca thinks she's untouchable. I'll show her she's not. I thought he was just talking trash, you know. Nolan's always talking big." The case seemed to be building against Nolan, especially when DNA results came back showing his skin cells under Becca's fingernails. But Nolan's court-appointed attorney quickly countered, claiming it was from a previous consensual encounter, and without any direct evidence placing him at the scene that night, they couldn't prove involvement. Meanwhile, Jacob Reinhardt resigned from his position at Riverside Church and moved out of state with Catherine. The scandal had made their lives in Hollow Creek impossible, regardless of his guilt or innocence. The investigation stalled. Without witnesses, without cameras, without a murder weapon, the case grew cold. The DNA evidence wasn't enough, it only proved Becca and Nolan had contact at some point, not that he had killed her. And while Jacob had motive and his alibi had fallen apart, there was nothing concrete tying him to the scene. Some in town whispered about a third possibility, that Robert Alton had discovered his daughter's secret life and, in a rage, had silenced her to prevent scandal. He had no alibi either, Margaret had been at her sister's that night. But Hayes dismissed this theory quickly. The precision of the wound didn't match an emotional crime of passion, and Robert's arthritic hands wouldn't have had the strength to subdue the struggling young woman. As weeks turned to months, the case files grew thicker but no clearer. Hayes would wake in the night, haunted by the image of Becca wrapped in that choir robe, her final song silenced. He reviewed the evidence obsessively, looking for anything they might have missed. A year passed. Then 5. Then 10. By the 20th anniversary of Becca's death, Sheriff Grayson had retired, and Hayes had taken his place. The annual ritual remained unchanged. Margaret Alton would place flowers on the church steps every April 3rd. Robert had passed away 5 years earlier, the grief having hollowed him out until pneumonia finally took him. The plaque by the choir room, installed on the 10th anniversary, read simply, "She sang for heaven. Justice still waits." In 2024, 22 years after the murder, Hayes, now gray at the temples and carrying reading glasses in his shirt pocket, received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single church bulletin from St. Mary's, dated April 3, 2002. On the back, in handwriting he didn't recognize, were the words, "2 men. 1 knife. Check the choir robe again." Hayes immediately ordered the evidence box retrieved from storage. The choir robe, sealed in plastic for over 2 decades, still carried faint brownish stains. But when they tested it with newer, more advanced methods, they found something the original investigation had missed: a microscopic fiber caught in the gold trim, a fiber that matched no clothing Becca had been wearing, nor the choir robe itself. The case had just been reopened when Hayes received another anonymous note: "Some secrets don't stay buried. Some confessions aren't made to priests." The investigation continues, the truth still elusive. But in Hollow Creek, the whispers never truly stopped. Every time the choir sings, every time a dark SUV passes the church, every time a new youth pastor smiles too warmly at a teenage girl, the town remembers. Was it Jacob, the man of God with secret desires? Was it Nolan, the troubled youth with a violent streak? Or was there someone else, watching from the shadows, whose name had never appeared in the case files? In the choir room at St. Mary's, Becca's photograph hangs beside the plaque. Her smile seems to hold secrets, as if she knows the answer but has chosen to keep it to herself, at least for now. Justice still waits. But for how much longer?